Believe your justice. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am, of course, GeneralLotz, and I have an absolutely excellent announcement for everyone. Metal Wolf Chaos is going to finally get a remaster. Now, what is Metal Wolf Chaos? Perhaps you haven't heard of Metal Wolf Chaos. Perhaps it simply is just gibberish when I say, believe your justice. Or Richard! Metal Wolf Chaos is a extremely obscure, Japanese-exclusive Xbox third-person shooter. It's a giant robot. Well, it's a mech third-person shooter. The robots are more moderately sized than giant. Now, the game was never released in the West for some reason. Now, you might think, well, it's just some sort of generic, behind-the-back third-person robot game, right? Like, why do we need that? Metal Wolf Chaos is literally the most patriotic game imaginable. You play as the president who has to fight against the evil vice president who is trying to take over America. It is every bit as cheesy as that sounds. Now, it of course has English voice acting. And the English voice acting is the stuff of legends, ladies and gentlemen. The English voice acting is Resident Evil levels of excellent, and the script is utterly insane. I mean, when I say it's utterly insane, it is like the most insane stuff you've ever heard. Now, it is not shit. It is not bad in any way. It is the most humorous thing imaginable, and that is why it has been able to stay in the popular consciousness, despite the fact that no one really can play the game unless they get a Japanese Xbox, and they get the copy of the game, which is very difficult to come by. Now, getting a remaster of this is one of those things that really justifies remasters. Now, what we're looking at here, this gameplay footage that's being played, is Dark Souls, the remaster. Now, Dark Souls only came out in 2012, so it's not an old game. Did it really need a remaster? Did it really need a remake? Well, that's the thing. You know, you can get the game running with 60 FPS, you can get the game running with good graphics, but you gotta mod it. And you have to have some degree of skill with modding to get it to work, and you gotta read all the tutorials and stuff like that. Whereas this is just a game you buy, and it works. And, that's what many players just want to do. They just want to play the game, and it's understandable. You got games like Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, when Halo 1 was re-released for its 10th anniversary back in 2011. That game, it might seem like that wasn't really justified, but when you think about it, it really was. Because Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary allows you to play it through Xbox Live, or at least it did at that time. I don't know if Xbox Live still works on Xbox 360 or not. Back when Halo Combat Evolved came out, you couldn't really play that game cooperatively online. You could only do it through a local area network. And, the remastering really did allow for greater play functionality. Now, this here allows for you to just be able to play the game with some marginally updated graphics, and it just works out of the proverbial box. Metal Wolf Chaos is a good example of a remastering that it's really a necessity. There's no other way to play the game other than just having the disc and a Japanese Xbox, because for whatever reason, the Xbox One, the Xbox One Zero, whichever way you want to call it, it cannot be emulated for some reason. The last time I saw any work on it being emulated, the best they were able to do was Halo 1 kind of crappily. And I don't think there's been any progress since then. So really, these days, most of these rare or otherwise unobtainable games you can just emulate, but Metal Wolf Chaos you can't, and Metal Wolf Chaos kind of sells itself, because it is such a unique premise. It's one of those games that, it's not necessarily one of a kind, but it's definitely one of those games that you don't see every day. And it's not just some obscure game that no one cares about. Case in point, you've got Metal Slug 3D. From all that I've heard, it's kind of a crappy game, and, it's something that, unless you really care about Metal Slug, you're not going to really want to play it, and you're not going to want to get a Japanese PS2, and even then, you can just emulate it fairly easily. There's other games like the Metal Hero Saga, which is another PS2 game, made to cash in on the Metal Heroes. The Metal Heroes, for those who do not know, is sort of a, well, it is a Super Sentai kind of thing, except it has sort of like RoboCop-esque figures. Well, except they're not really robots. Ultimately, it's sort of like Super Sentai, but not. Look it up. It's a game that has a very niche audience, and once again, you can emulate. But Metal Wolf Chaos is something that actually has pretty wide appeal, because it is funny. You have these English voice actors reading the most overwrought dialogue imaginable, and you have this extremely barmy situation of the president fighting the evil vice president. It's one of those things that it works on levels that a game like the Metal Hero Saga just can't, and it's easy to see why people in the West wanted a release for so long. And it's not just one of those games that it's rare, everybody wants it, and that's the only reason why everyone wants it. Whenever you see a video on Metal Wolf Chaos, it's a game you really want to play because you want to experience the insanity for yourself. And the overall gameplay, at least from what it appears on the various videos that I've seen, actually looks to be pretty fun. Just looks like a standard behind-the-back third-person shooter. And, you know, it's interesting to see that it's being released now in 2018. And it's one of the few games I'm actually really excited to play, because it is such a different concept, even though the game itself was released in 2004. So often today, games don't really have the creativity that they really need to be memorable. Metal Wolf Chaos is memorable because there was a lot of creativity put in. There was obviously a lot of passion put into it, a lot like Dark Souls here. Dark Souls 1 had a great deal of passion put into it, because no one expected it to sell, you know, millions upon millions of copies. No one expected it to be this big cash cow that it is. And I think that's one of the big problems when it comes to a great many franchises. You know, after you get done with the first one, everyone expects it to make just as much money as the first one, and so everyone is really concerned with keeping it safe. That's why, you know, when you move on from Iron Man 1 to Iron Man 2, Iron Man 2 is a very safe movie because you want to make as much money as you did in Iron Man 1. Metal Wolf Chaos being this really obscure game that no one really was concerned with it making a lot of money, it is a game that has a lot of creativity, a lot of insane creativity, a lot of creativity that you wouldn't think would be as successful as it is. And I think once we finally get to play it here in the West, it's going to be fairly popular. Popular for what it is. I don't think it's going to be nearly as popular as, say, Blops or anything like that, but it should be fairly popular amongst the community that actually likes such games. And this actually gets into an interesting concept of, can you mass-produce Dark Souls? Can you mass-produce a game like Resident Evil 1? You know, Resident Evil 1 is one of those games that really stands the test of time because it's a game that had a lot of passion put into it. It's a game that is allowed to develop naturally. Dark Souls 1 here was allowed to develop naturally. The creators were able to put some actual creativity into it without the constant fear of, well, what if it doesn't sell 10 million copies? Metal Wolf Chaos is a game that was able to develop naturally. No one was really concerned with it selling 10 million copies. That's why you can have lines like, "Believe your justice." And I think that's something that we need to try to keep in mind when it comes to gaming. A lot of these games of the past became so popular and became so beloved because they were able to develop naturally. They were works of art that were created by, well, artists. When you try to force art, when you try to mass-produce art, you find that it doesn't feel nearly as good. It's not nearly as entertaining. It's just, you know they were trying way too hard. A game like Metal Wolf Chaos, with its utter insanity, cannot be forced. It is a game that cannot just be made. It has to develop on its own. And it's just, I'm glad we finally get to actually experience it in its full glory. Now, the game's remastering is more just a porting, I would think. Being able to have, you know, higher screen resolutions. The graphics, from what I recall, don't look particularly bad. And it's not as though that you really need super amazing graphics for what it is. It's sold on its personality alone. Because if it didn't have that personality, if it didn't have the believe your justice concept in it, it would just be another, you know, mech game. We've got plenty of those. And that's one of the aspects of games that I think also is a bit neglected these days. Personality is very important. Dark Souls got so popular because it has this personality that is really unmatched by many other games. Hell, even games in its own series fails to match the sheer level of personality this one game has. Also, as you can tell, Blighttown, it no longer lags. Even modded, I would get some lag spikes here and there. So I know that there are some complaints about Dark Souls Remastered. I haven't bothered looking at them because I really do not care. But when it comes to Dark Souls Remastered, I'm really quite fond of it. The game just works. I didn't have a problem with Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition. I felt that, you know, at least it's Dark Souls on PC. You can, and it worked with mods well enough. But this, it's like, wow, you finally got a PC port that works. It's about fucking time. But all that being said, Metal Wolf Chaos, I hope, there's some things I do hope that happens with it. I do hope that the controls work. I really do. Dark Souls 1 on PC had the problem of having really bad controls unless you had a controller. I really hope the PC controls aren't bad. I do intend to play it with a controller, since it was originally a console game. But I also hope that the menu system works well. Because I really, really hate it when a lot of these console ports have really crappy menu systems. I hope you can tweak the graphics and stuff like that. I hope it's actually a good PC port and it doesn't suffer from a lot of frame drops and things of that nature. From Software has improved over time, and they are better now than they once were when they came out with the Prepare to Die edition. Dark Souls 2, I still would say, this is a very good PC port here, but then again, it was a remastering, and they kind of had to make it good. But Dark Souls 2, of the original Dark Souls games, was probably the best PC port of the lot. Dark Souls 3 was not a very good PC port. When I first started playing it, I was getting at most 40 frames per second on a rig that should have more been able to handle it. Now that it's received a number of updates, it now works just fine. And I'm able to get 60 FPS throughout. I think the big DLC, I forget what it's called at the moment. I think like Circled City or something like that. Cinder City, Panama City, I forget. But whichever one, whichever city it is, was finally able to fix all those bloody frame rate issues, which I'm very happy to see. I just hope we don't get another Prepare to Die edition when it comes to Metal Wolf Chaos, because that is one of the few games that I'm actually looking forward to. And it's one of those games that, you know, I haven't played a good behind-the-back robot shooter in a very long time, and I almost died there. In a very long time, and so I'm really just hoping they don't screw it up in terms of its PC port. Because when can you remember a really good behind-the-back robot shooter? I can't remember one in the last 10 years. Maybe I've missed one, but I think that's going to work in terms of gameplay. I mean, the younger fans who didn't play those back in the day will get to finally experience what it's like to pilot a mech. The only game that I can think of that's like a robot shooter, but it really isn't, is that Metal Gear Solid Revengeance, but I don't think it really counts. But ultimately, that being said, I think the gameplay is going to impress a bit, just because there hasn't been a game like that in some time. And just that story. That story is hopefully going to inspire a great many memes. Now, I could be wrong, since it isn't out yet, but I'm excited by the trailer. I'm excited by the whole thing. It's a game that already has been released, so we already know what it's going to look like, more or less. So we shall just have to wait and see what shall happen. I'm not that big a fan of constantly remastering games, or at least I wasn't until I gave it some thought. There are some games that, when it's remastered for a modern-day system, it is just much easier to play it that way. You know, you got like Resident Evil 1. It allows the next generation to play it, and also, most importantly, it allows it for it to be played easily. You know, you could say it's kind of a waste since there's already a remake, the Resident Evil remake on the GameCube. But getting that to work means you have to have either a GameCube or you have to set up Dolphin. Because Dolphin, you can play it in 1080p via that, and there's some high-res texture mods for that as well. But with the Resident Evil remake that came out, I think, what, 2 years ago? It's just, you play a game and it works. And ultimately, you know, remastering isn't a particularly bad thing in terms of drumming up popularity. And at least you know a remastering, depending upon the quality of the port, at least you know it's going to be good. Because it's still the base game, just with better graphics and potentially better performance. Because with Dark Souls Remastered, you know it's not going to be a bad game, because it's the same bloody game. Now, there could be differences in hitboxes and stuff like that. I have never really been that attentive when it comes to when it comes to these little minutia, but in terms of just general gameplay for someone such as myself, it works perfectly fine. Alright, we will go ahead and kill Quelaag, because why not? It's not really meant to be a Let's Play, just sort of a discussion of Metal Wolf. I think also it's coming out at probably one of the better times, simply because gaming needs a bit more humor to it. A lot of these recent games just have lacked a bit of personality. And gaming in general, you know, there's an interesting concept that we're starting to see, is that once again, the first-person shooter campaign seems to be being neglected. Blops 4 is not going to have a campaign, and there's discussion by the gaming journos, and we all know how intelligent they are, about how do first-person shooters even need a campaign? Realistically, campaigns are the only thing that really keep a game alive. And one of the things, the reason I say that is, you know, there are a lot of these legendary multiplayer games, like Unreal Tournament, but Unreal Tournament doesn't necessarily have a plot, but it still is popular for what it is. But like when it comes to a lot of these Call of Duty games, they do end up getting forgotten very quickly. Like Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, does anyone really care about that game anymore? Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, oh crap! Oh, I thought you were going to do that massive wave attack. I remember the first time I played this particular game. I remember this boss was so difficult. Now I can already see the graphical enhancements on Quelaag here. And Quelaag does look cool. And the texture work on her is a lot better as well. And run. And the lava also works better here as well. I'm quite impressed by that. But see, that's what I think remasterings can do, is they can breathe new life into a game. But it still will show that there's a lack of overall originality in the gaming market today. Metal Wolf Chaos, though, is still a good example of one of those rare games that without the remastering, without the re-release, let's just call it that, because it doesn't necessarily need to be remastered, it just needs to be released where people can play it. With that, you know, what is she doing over there? What's fucking Man-Eater Mildred doing? They didn't fix that, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. They did not fix Man-Eater Mildred. Her AI is still really, really, really bad. But I'm definitely going to probably pre-order Metal Wolf Chaos. Now, for the fans, ladies and gentlemen, I will talk about Doom 2 X2. Everything I've heard about it sounds good. It's actually going to, you know, have a plot, unlike Belive 4. Because yes, first-person shooters still need plots. I honestly think when it comes to Doom 2 X2, there's no way, unless they're unlucky, there's really no way they're going to make it particularly bad. And the reason I say that is everyone is so very safe now when it comes to that. I doubt they would turn it into a Call of Duty knockoff, or they would turn it into a PUBG knockoff. But I still feel it's not going to be quite as imaginative as it could be. Because they are afraid of losing money, they are afraid of not making $100 million, they are afraid of that. So they're not going to allow the overall developers to put... Now that looks really cool. That was pretty neat. And I am so not going to die, hopefully. But they're not going to really be that unique with it, just because they do want to be safe. I could be wrong, I haven't played it. But that was my main problem with Doom 2016, is that it did feel very safe. It felt like they wanted to push some boundaries. Be a little different from the norm. Oh crap, no! Maybe this game's a little easier. I hadn't really paid that close attention until now. Until I had my review mind powered up. Maybe it is easier. I don't know. I don't really care. It's not going to bother me that much. But that being said, though, I highly doubt Devolver Digital, the people making the Metal Wolf Chaos remaster, are going to make it easier. But then again, it is a From Software game, so there's that. But all that being said, I am looking forward to it, because finally it's a imaginative game. Something a little different from the norm. Something that is unique. Besides, I just want to see where that plot goes. That's the main thing. I've always wanted to see where the plot goes in Metal Wolf Chaos. Like, how does that end? And all the little minutia that goes into it. And also, it'll be a lot easier to play simply because you won't have the menus in Japanese. Done. And smacker. Let's see, where are we before this video comes to a close? One thing, I've already covered most of what I want to cover, but I think one last concept here, ladies and gentlemen. The big problem with modern day gaming is just a fear that is set in. And that's the fear of, will somebody be offended by something? That's why I'm so glad that Devolver Digital actually went ahead and made a remastering of Metal Wolf Chaos. No one wants to be controversial. I can tell you this. Metal Wolf Chaos is going to be good for a great many reasons, and probably the third best of them all is the fact that it's going to offend just a couple sensibilities. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good, great justice, or whatever makes you happy.